Well, hello everyone, and welcome to this Authors Roundtable for the 2021 Australian Christian Book of the Year Awards, affectionately known as the ACBoys. And I'm delighted to have with us today three of our shortlisted authors who I'm going to ask to introduce themselves briefly. I want them to give us a brief summary of their book and tell us why they wrote it. And then we're going to have a chat together about a couple of themes that I think connect these three books together. And then we'll sort of take out the discussion with what they're hoping that you as readers might take away from their books. So welcome, everyone. Great to have you here in this online environment. It's the second time we've done the Book of the Year Awards online, but I think we're all very used to it. I believe my screen's a little jumpy, and that's just for a kind of cinema verite effect. We want it to be a real Zoom, not a kind of pretend, really well-produced one. So I hope you can cope with that. My name's Clarke, by the way. For those who haven't met me before, I'm a judge this year and very honoured and privileged to be involved in the Christian Book of the Year. So let's turn first to Sue. Hi, Sue. Great to have you on in the discussion. You are an award-winning journalist. You're a travel writer, a biographer. I believe you've written something like 20 books at least, from what I can count.
Yep.
That's all right. And your book that's been shortlisted is Healing Lives. And I'd love you to tell us about it in 1 minute. What's in the book and why'd you write it?
Okay, fantastic. Thanks, Greg. Well, it was a book about that Australian icon, Dr. Catherine Hamlin, who went over to Ethiopia in 1959, ostensibly to set up a maternity unit for young women giving birth. And when she was there, she and her husband, Reg, discovered that women were suffering terrible fistula, really agonizing birth injuries from difficult births. And so she said the pair of them ended up setting up the fistula hospital in Ethiopia, which was only the second fistula hospital in the world after New York in the 1800s. And while she was there, she managed to save the life of a young Ethiopian peasant girl who'd had a terrible birth and was on the verge of death when she arrived at the hospital. Catherine and Reg saved her life, and the young woman, Mamitu, became absolutely dedicated to the pair and started cleaning the floors of the hospital and making beds and doing everything she could. And then she started actually helping in the operations. And finally, she's become one of the top fistula surgeons in the world. Even though, she's from a little village in the highlands of Ethiopia, she can't read or write. She's never been to school for one day in her life. But now she's at the hospital and surgeons come from all over the world to learn from her. So I was just amazed at this strong story of a friendship between an older woman and a younger woman and the kind of things that they gave to each other. And I just felt compelled to write about it because I felt that it deserved a bigger audience.
Was your motivation the fact that her story hadn't been told, but Catherine's had been told?
That's right. I think a lot of people knew about Catherine, although the book about Catherine was from a few years ago, so people hadn't really kept up with what Catherine was doing and how the hospital had really extended. It's set up lots of clinics all around Ethiopia now, and it's moved into other countries in Africa as well. But nobody really knew very much about the story of Mamitu because she's so humble and so self-effacing. She didn't really ever like talking about herself, and it took a long time to try and persuade her to tell her story as well.
Yeah, well, thank you. It's a wonderful read, and I did know something of the story of the hospital, but nothing of Mamitu's story. So,
right,
job accomplished with me at least. Thanks, Sue. And you can find Sue's work at suewilliams.com.au. Just a little plug there for you as well. Let's turn to Steve. Stephen Liggins is a former first-grade cricketer, a journalist and author, and now an Anglican minister in Sydney. And his shortlisted book is called The Good Sporting Life, subtitled Loving and Playing Sport as a Follower of Jesus. Steve, give us the 1 minute and why'd you write it?
Yeah, I'm a Christian. I have always enjoyed playing and watching sport, and I've always been very concerned as a Christian to try and make every aspect of my Christian life part of everything else. So I've noticed over the years that for some people who are Christians, their sporting life is over here and their Christian life is over here, and they often don't really integrate together. One gentleman once said to me when he was younger, he said, "Isn't it nice that God lets me play sport in my time off, i.e. time off from being a Christian?" And so I guess what I wanted to do is to help Christians think about sport Christianly and how sport can be a real plus, not a minus, for their spiritual lives and for the kingdom of God. And one of the things which I guess promotes me to write it was that there isn't really anything on that topic around that I'm aware of. You can read some good sporting biographies of Christians like Eric Liddell. I think there are a few books over in America of a certain sort, but helping just Christians to think about a significant area of many people's lives right around the world, how it can fit in with their Christian life and be a plus, not a minus. So that was my motivation.
Yeah, wonderful. And there is something unique about it, I think, that focus on, the good part of the good sporting life, like how can you do this well? But of course, I did still enjoy the fact that it opens with a great story about you playing against Stephen Mark Waugh. So, yeah, good on you. We'll come back to that. Sam Chan. So here he is. Sam's a medical doctor and still allowed to see patients during the COVID era, which is great for him and great for the patients. Also then a theologian and public speaker with the organisation City Bible Forum. Just a declaration of interest. I actually am the chairman of that organisation, so I know Sam's work well. And Sam did a doctorate on evangelism, but he also makes dubious claims of his skills in karaoke on the back of his book. And his shortlisted book is How to Talk About Jesus Without Being That Guy. Sam.
Oh, thank you, Greg. Yes. So I wrote the book because I think it's in the DNA of every Christian to want to tell their friends about Jesus. But at the same time, we live in a society where you're not meant to talk about Jesus. So how do we talk about Jesus without becoming that guy? And part of the reason why it is a challenge is we are now in that post-everything world, post-Christendom, post-Christian, post-church, post-reached. And I like to sum up the problem as when Billy Graham last preached in 1979 at Randwick Racecourse, and I was there, he would tell people, he would preach a 20-minute Bible talk, tell people, pray the prayer, come down the front, and he said the buses will wait, meaning the non-believer back then was a church non-believer. They came on a church bus. But the non-believer now is not a church non-believer. They have not heard the gospel before. So how can we tell them about Jesus? And that's why I wrote the book. It's 8 simple tips. But also I wrote the book because up until now, if you sign up for a course on evangelism, you either got taught evangelism by a preacher and you got taught how to give a 20-minute monologue at an event, or you got taught on how to walk up to a stranger on a university campus. But how do I evangelize this other group, my friends and family, who I'm going to have to see every day for the next 10, 15 years of my life, where a 20-minute monologue will not work and they're not going to walk into a church for an event and they're not a stranger that I'm never going to see again, so I can't just evangelize them like a stranger. So that's why I wrote the book, to empower, equip, and excite Christians to evangelize.
Fantastic. Thank you. Well, thank you all for the books. I thoroughly enjoyed reading each of them, and you're all from different backgrounds. You bring different things to your writing experience, but it did occur to me that there's a sort of theme that connects you together, and it's, for me, there was something around the topic of friendship, mateship, the way human beings make each other better. That's quite important. I thought we should talk about for a little while. So if I can go to you first, I mean, obviously there's the partnership between Catherine Hamlin and Mamito Gashi is the kind of core of your book. And there's a little quote I had from the end of the book, actually.
Spoiler alert.
That's right. It's not quite the end, but it's near. Where someone says about Catherine, I see Catherine as the sun who lit up Mamito when she was so alone and vulnerable as a fistula patient, and Mamito shone so brightly herself as a truly extraordinary woman, rescuing thousands of others from darkness. There's something there about the power of friendship, is there not?
Absolutely. And it was quite an extraordinary friendship between Catherine and Mamito because there was a big difference in their ages. But more than that, there was a huge difference in their backgrounds. I mean, Catherine was from the north of Sydney. She came from a wealthy family. She had a great education, university education. She'd travelled the world. Mamito was a young girl from the Highlands. Her family were peasant farmers. She had no education. As I said before, they were dirt poor. They had nothing. So and they lived at opposite ends of the earth as well. But they were so, so different. And yet the power of friendship transcended those differences so that they were able to come together in the real spirit of friendship and work together and really make a difference in the world. And the fact that they were both very committed Christians, I think really helped them with that as well, because both of them were incredibly selfless, and that came often, I think, from their faith. And that really bound them together as well. I mean, the two women used to love sitting reading the Bible together. I mean, Catherine could read the Bible. Mamitu could only kind of hear what Catherine was saying, and she often didn't understand that too. But I think that love of God really bound the two women together as well.
It's a lifelong friendship that they enjoyed. That sort of longevity seems to be important to friends. You know, there's a friend you just meet and have a little kind of exciting moment with, but then there's those people who are deeply woven into your life that really
absolutely
make you both capable of more.
Yeah.
Yes, Steve, the theme for me in your book connected more to the sort of mateship of sport and the value of teams. And you talk in the book, I have a quote from yours as well, not at the end. You talk about the way that sport can put people in contact with people they wouldn't necessarily think they'd become friends with. You talk about it being a mission field and a minefield because it's drawing kind of people who are quite different together, but they have this one thing in common, sport.
Yeah, I think, I mean, in my book, I say that sport has many potential benefits, one of which is relationships. And there's something about playing together, striving together with, or striving against someone in a sporting contest, which I think is quite a bonding thing. And it's a shared interest. And one of the things about sport usually is you do it from week to week. So you have ongoing relationships with the people you do it with. And from my observation, say when I played cricket, is that cricket attracted really quite a range of people from, you know, the richer to the poorer from all around Sydney. And I found myself getting to know and befriend all sorts of people who I wouldn't normally have rubbed shoulders with. And I mean, one of the things about sport, I mean, sport, as we know, it developed really in the 18th century in England. The churches and the schools promoted it for reasons mainly of community and character development, and for the churches outreach as well. But the community idea of sport was one of the significant things in its development. Why do parents get their kids to play sport? Often it's to make a few friends, be healthy, meet a few people. And because it's so relational and bonding in that way, if you're with people who are perhaps not believers, the potential is there for you to be an example, a witness in your words and actions. And if you're playing with people who are believers, you can actually actively seek to encourage them or even disciple them. So it's a week-to-week thing. You're not working with them, so you can sort of get away from them a bit. But yeah, it's just a really good opportunity for all those sorts of relational. I mean, it's fun having friends, but you can also have those other benefits as well.
Yeah, it's interesting that humans seem to do a good job of building those friendships when they've got a shared kind of task. You know, Catherine and Mamitu had a job at the hospital that they were working on, the sporting teams doing something. And Sam, you pick up a slightly different theme, but I'm sure it's related around this question of hospitality and the way that, you know, inviting people into your lives and eating together and so forth. You say hospitality is the secret hidden source of evangelism. What do you mean?
Well, hospitality, the funny thing about hospitality is we think it's about the food, but it's never about the food. The food just provides the space and the permission for good conversation, where conversation moves beyond what you did on the weekend and it moves towards things like values and worldviews. And before soon you're talking about faith and God and prayer. So hospitality provides the spaces and the permission where these conversations can happen. And if you look at the Bible, Jesus was always around food. So somehow food is just a big ingredient when it comes to evangelism. So I say to people, it doesn't have to be food. Really, it's looking for creative ways to do hospitality. And also just blending with this theme of friendship that we're talking about, I also argue in the book that one of the main reasons our non-believing friends don't believe in Jesus isn't just that they haven't heard the gospel. It's actually because they don't have any Christian friends that believe in Jesus. So we can actually surround our non-believing friends with other friends who do believe in Jesus, suddenly the Jesus story isn't just true, but it's way more believable, because our non-believing friends will go, hang on, all these people that I know, love and trust also believe in Jesus. Hey, this story is way more believable. And I also argue in the book that this is the best time for this, because studies show that 60 to 80% of Australians say they are lonely, that right now there's a loneliness epidemic in the Western world. It's more likely to kill you than smoking or cancer. And my wife, Steph, and I have noticed that almost all our really, really good non-believing friends have only moved into Sydney in the last 2 to 5 years. So because everyone's so transitory, people don't have that trusted network of friends. So we can simply be loving and be that trusted network of friends to our non-believing friends. And in that process, the Jesus story won't just be true, but more believable.
I think you've all tapped into something really important about what sort of Christianity brings into the world, in different ways and in very different contexts. Just finally, what are you sort of hoping that your readers will take away from their experience of reading your book? Let's go the other way around. Sam.
That really, it's very doable. It's not so much, how can I talk about Jesus? It's almost, how can I be Jesus to my friends? And evangelism opportunities will arise. And often we've been taught, you got to tell bad news so they know the good news. But how about we flip it and say, if we tell them the good news, suddenly they will realize the bad news. They realize how broken and sinful this world is. And if we can show them just how much more beautiful, imaginable, and livable the Jesus story is, then they too will want to believe in Jesus.
Thanks, Sam. And Steve, what are you hoping readers will take away?
Yeah, well, if we're followers of Jesus, we want to love God and we want to love others. And I'd like people who are Christians involved in sport, whether it's players or supporters or coaches or parents, to think, how does my loving God and loving others impact on my sporting involvement? And there are so many aspects. We can thank God for sport. There's all the relational sorts of things which we can focus on. And I think sport, as I said, can be a real plus for the kingdom and the spirit and for our spiritual lives. And so I hope that's what they'll take away from it. I'll think, how can I love God and love others through my involvement in sport, whatever it may be?
Yeah, great. Thanks very much. And Sue, what's your hope?
Well, I just wanted to mention Steve and Sam because it was really interesting watching the Olympics and the silver medal winner in the high jump, Nicola McDermott, talking about her faith in that real sporting arena just as she won the medal. And I think that was probably a really powerful evangelizing kind of moment for a lot of people watching, really, because they thought, wow, this is an amazing woman and she's not afraid to talk about her religion, and it's really kind of quite inspiring. So I'm sorry, I just wanted to mention that. But my book, hopefully people will read it and see what amazing things people can do when they have faith and how they can really change the world through just kind of real sacrifice and self-denial. And I mean, they probably don't see it in terms of sacrifice. They see it much more as really being able to help other people and really being able to spread the message in terms of, better health and a better life outcome, but generally a much happier and more peaceful life as well.
Yeah. Well, thanks to all three of you for writing such fabulous books. And I've learned a lot by reading all three of them. And all the best with the awards this evening. Great to see you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Cheers.